Hey, what's up, everyone? I want to welcome you guys to another episode of Here's What I Think with your host, Charles Tabansi, where we discuss everything from current events, economics, politics, and how it all relates to business and life. Let's get into today's topic, and we have a hell of a show for you guys. Before we get into it, please make sure you like the video and subscribe to the channel. Now, as you guys know, the presidential election was an absolute bloodbath. It didn't turn out the way a lot of us thought it would. I thought that actually Kamala was going to win. It ended up not even being anything competitive whatsoever. And we also got to find out that the Democrats had some low turnout, or they didn't have the turnout that they expected. And the question then became, after they lost, why did Kamala and the Democrats lose the way that they lost? They lost the House and they lost the White House. Why did they lose in that kind of fashion? And a lot of people have been trying to pick up the pieces. Various political strategists, various political commentators on YouTube and the internet have been trying to pick up the pieces. So what happened? Yesterday, I was going through the internet and I came across a clip from CNN's channel, CNN on YouTube. And they invited on a Democratic analyst. And she came on and gave one of the most scathing rebukes of the job the Democrats did, not only in running the campaign, but with their poor messaging over the last few years that ultimately led to them losing the White House. So for those of you who didn't hear what this lady had to say, I want to play her comments for you now, and I'm going to come back and continue on the show. Take a listen to her comments here.
Julie Roginski, I want to go to you on this because, of course, he is making the speech at the White House against this backdrop of a lot of finger pointing right now in the Democratic Party. Some who are saying, look, had President Biden not announced, to try to get reelected, and we all know how that transpired later on, perhaps this wouldn't be the situation. And we'll never be able to know, right? What do you say to that?
I'm going to speak some hard truths to my friends in the Democratic Party. This is not Joe Biden's fault. It's not Kamala Harris's fault. It's not Barack Obama's fault. It is the fault of the Democratic Party in not knowing how to communicate effectively to voters. We are not the party of common sense, which is what the message that voters sent to us. For a number of reasons. We don't know how to speak to voters. When we address Latino, and language has meaning. When we address Latino voters as Latinx, for instance, because that's the politically correct thing to do. It makes them think that we don't even live on the same planet as they do. When we are too afraid to say that, hey, college kids, if you're trashing a campus at Columbia University because you're unhappy about some sort of policy and you're taking over a university, and you're trashing it and preventing other students from learning, that is unacceptable. But we're so worried about alienating one or another cohort in our coalition that we don't know what to say when normal people look at that and say, wait a second, I send my kids to college so they can learn, not so that they can burn buildings and trash lawns, right? And so on and so forth. When we put pronouns after names and say she, her, as opposed to saying, you know what, if I call you by the wrong pronoun, call me out, I'm sorry, I won't do it again. But stop with the virtue signaling and just speak to people like they're normal. There's nothing I'm going to say to Shermichael that I'm not going to say to you, that I'm not going to say to somebody else. I speak the same language to everybody. But that's not what Democrats do. We constantly try to parse out different ways of speaking to different cohorts because our focus groups or our polling shows that so-and-so appeals to such and such. That's not how normal people think. It's not common sense. And we need to start being the party of common sense again. Joe Biden is not responsible for that. Neither is Kamala Harris. It is a problem that Democrats have had for years. I've been banging the drum on this for, I don't know how, probably 10 years, if not longer on this. We need to get back to being the party of common sense, that people look at us and say, we understand you. We appreciate what you say because you speak our language. And until we do that, we should stop blaming other people for our own mistakes.
Just to follow up with you, and Shermichael, I'm going to get to you. What would you say to those who would argue, well, Joe Biden and then Kamala Harris, they were the messengers. They were the top of the ticket. They were responsible for trying to get to those voters and get through to them with the messaging you're talking about.
Listen, and again, I have a lot of friends who I'm going to criticize here, and I know them personally, so I apologize from a personal level. But when you're spending your time at the White House trying to have viral moments with Steve Doocy of Fox News, which nobody in the real world in Bucks County, Pennsylvania, or in Saginaw County, Michigan, knows or cares about. When you're trying to go viral on TikTok because you're somehow taking on and trying to humiliate an anchor at a cable news station, as opposed to looking into the camera and saying, this is what we have accomplished for you today in plain terms, right? You could look into the camera and say, thanks to our infrastructure bill, Route 212 in Bucks County, Pennsylvania will finally have that pothole filled in Regalsville that you've been complaining about. But that's not what they did. They try to have these weird viral moments constantly where they're trying to take on Ducey at Fox, and they think it's hilarious. Nobody knows or cares who Ducey is, and the people who do know him are not voting for us anyway. So the point is, there's a way to talk to people on their own terms about things that they care about. That is a messaging problem the White House has had since day one. I've complained about it since day one. I'm complaining about it now, not to Monday morning quarterback, not to be rude, not to make anybody feel bad, but to say going forward, because I agree with Joe Biden, that was one of the finest speeches I've ever heard anybody give just now. I agree with him. We need to pick ourselves up, look at what went wrong, and change it so we can win again. The first way to do that is to talk to people like they're normal human beings and make them think that we are the party of common sense, not people who are afraid of alienating somebody so that we don't have positions that are clear, concise, and accurate as to where they are.
So you heard what she had to say. What are my thoughts on this? It's interesting. Just last night, I was having this conversation with my brother yesterday. I said the Democrats really screwed up. They really screwed up because they did a poor job of messaging, and a lot of the stuff that they did, the party leaned too much into the left and some of the extreme ideologies. I also told him, and let me reiterate this from the onset here again, I am not a Democrat nor am I a Republican. I am center-right. Center-right. Before I was a bit of a centrist, but I started leaning more towards the right the moment I became a parent. The moment I became a parent, I wasn't just thinking about myself. I was also thinking about the things that would impact my young daughter. And I think that's has to do with a lot of the reasons why some people are choosing to support the Republicans here. Now, do they have some extreme views? Sure. I don't agree with an overall abortion ban the way they do. No. But I do believe in protecting the family structure, and I don't believe that kids should be taught some of the crazy things that some people that are the extremists on the left, they want to teach. I believe that that is wrong, 100%. 100%. And I also have some other areas where I agree with the Republicans. But let's get back to the Democrats for a moment here. Clearly something went wrong. On the eve of the election, I saw a clip from from Galloway, and he was saying that the Democrats have made young men feel invisible, that they're not breaking through to them. They feel like the Democrats don't care about young men. Well, that's a problem. And it's one of the reasons that they turned out in the numbers that they did for Donald Trump. It's one of the reasons that they did. So there's something wrong with the messaging. My brother yesterday we're talking about is like, well, there's some of the things that don't have to do with the Democrats, but is associated with them. Well, of course it's going to be associated with them. The reason is because the Democrats don't really stand anywhere. You can never have a solid position if you're afraid to offend everyone. I want to be politically correct on this. I want to be politically correct on that. I want to be politically correct. Well, you can't be politically correct on everything because otherwise you won't have an opinion. And the one thing about the right is they're unapologetic about some of their views. Now, whether you disagree, whether you agree with them or not is a different thing. But at least you know where they stand. And if you know where someone stands, it's easy to get behind them or say, look, I want to have nothing to do with this group of people. Nothing to do with them. Now, we can sit here and say, well, this is wrong information. They were low information voters and da-da-da-da. That's irrelevant. Do you know why? Because in politics, perception is reality. What people perceive of you is what they deem to be true. Whether it's true or not is a totally different story. And we can't get into this thing of, well, it's not true. They felt this, but it's not true. How far did that get you? So that means that if they still feel this thing about you, even though it's not true, something is wrong with your messaging and the way you're communicating who you really are. And what I liked about this particular segment was because she gave them the brutal honesty, which in a moment like this is what people need to hear. This is just the bloody facts about it. It is what people need to hear. And I think the Democrats need to re-strategize and spend the next 4 years really coming together as a coalition and having a good strategy going into the next election cycle. I've heard even left-leaning Democratic or left voices on the left or in opposition, let's say, of Donald Trump and his party, to say that for whatever we may think about the right, they get behind a lot of their voices. They have no problem with going on independent creators. Whereas Democrats, they're only dealing with legacy media. They support a lot of these creators. Well, this is what people on the left are saying. So maybe there needs to be a total shift in the party. And I think what the young lady said was 100% correct. So what I want to know from you guys, where do you stand on this? What are your thoughts on this particular show? Whatever you guys think, please leave your thoughts and comments in the comment section. And we'll catch you guys on the next show.